Hello, Plaid Man here. I am wearing my hat upside down. No, not upside down. Backwards. Because this will be rightwards. This is backwards. I need to get some plaid. Gee whiz. Sorry. I need to get a better setup, obviously. I need to get some plaid handkerchiefs. Because I usually wear like a bandana type thing. And it's like a weird style. Anyways. So I'm going to do 2 videos today. I know that's not okay to skip, and I need to get in the system of doing it every day throughout the week. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's no excuse. It's just I'm sorry. I mean, I could give you excuses, like, but they're lame, so I don't want to give them to you. Yeah. Anyways, all right. So kind of what I want to talk about today is this interesting thing I'm dealing with where I am applying for more work because it's an interesting situation. My wife and I are trying to find the finances to be able to buy a house, and they're looking at her stuff and they're like, well, you can get a townhome and a condo. And it's like, okay, she works like multiple jobs. My wife's epic. She I don't know how she does it. She's just so amazing. She manages to work and work and work and then come home and still make dinner. And to be fair, if I'm being honest with myself and with you, it's a scotch emasculating because I feel like I should be doing all those things. So when I'm goofing off and mucking about and not really doing things productive, I feel it because I realize like, oh, my wife's doing more than I am in this thing, on this ratio. She's giving 60, she's giving 100%, 120%, and I'm barely giving like 80%, and that's problematic. And I could justify it by being like, oh, yeah, this, that, and the other thing. I have a physical job. She works in an air-conditioned building. It's totally different. Yada, yada. All that aside, it's like, no, I need to up my game. But there's this thing, and I have no data to back this off. My sister-in-law, if she sees this video, is going to be like, well, what data is David backing this off of? But there's something I've observed, and I've heard whispers, more than whispers. I feel like if I've heard it, it's beyond whispers now. That there's this thing, this running joke that young kids these days don't want to work. And I understand that. I've thought about it a lot. And one reason I can come up with off the top of my head is I live in Southern California. I live in Los Angeles. And when you work and 25% of whatever you make goes away. And then when you buy things and they are the expense and the cost that they are, it becomes really disincentivizing to be like, okay, well, I want to work. Because what literally happens is when you do get paid, you look at it and you're like, oh, hold on. If I actually play this back, and not even that hard of a playback, I literally get to keep like less than 50% of what I made. You pay, $20 an hour or whatever, and you don't get that much money. And what's frustrating to me is you get a lot of people, even people like Tucker Carlson, who are kind of they're on the wavelength of what's going on in the world. Even they don't fully understand it because he's got millions in the bank, and he jokes about like, oh yeah, I can't balance a checkbook. And it's like, bro, you probably haven't had to balance a checkbook in a decade or 2. Okay? Balancing a checkbook implies that you spend more than you make. And then when you listen to him, he's like very much a like, So he's not one of those type of people that's like hurting. And I'm hurting, but I'm hurting for personal reasons because I work for a guy who I love. And unfortunately, his business is suffering, and he's not doing a very good job of maintaining it, which is one way of looking at it. But another way of looking at it is and this is kind of a me thing, but like another way of looking at it is he's raising the prices, but the prices are being raised so much faster. So he's trying to be a good person and be like, well, I mean, this is how much things cost, so I'm going to raise it more. And in actual fact, he needs to raise it more than that to just make a profit. And unfortunately, it suffers for me and for him because we're kind of like on paper thin budgets. And I don't want to justify my boss because as an employee, it hurts to not get the money that I need and earned because I worked. But as a friend, I understand like, hey, like, okay, you don't have the money, you can't pay me. What do I assume? Like, that's not gonna, what is that gonna do? Like, anyways, I'm not trying to justify all that. And frankly, I want to get to the other point of this concept of why people don't want to work. Because if you think about it, hey, let me work. All right, let's say somebody wants to work at McDonald's. And then like McDonald's is like, cool, you can work for like 12 hours or 15 hours or 20 hours a week. Okay, so that means that's not enough money to afford anything. Like, even though they're forced to pay $25 an hour because of McDonald's situation, they're like, no. Instead, we're going to have a bunch of people part-time, and that's how we'll do it. So then it's like, well, okay, I need a second job just to be able to, like, you know, combine this. Because if this is 20 hours or 20 hours and this is 30 hours, then combined I will have 50 hours. 20 and 20 is, okay, now I have a full week. But realize that when you're a kid, it's like oftentimes that isn't enough. And even if you're living with your family and you want to like buy cool things or whatever. And I feel like there's this overarching thing that people don't really realize. And I don't remember exactly the quote, but there's this concept of like, oh, well, when you're young, you're like super liberal and you want people to, you know, give and give and give and give. And then when you get older, you realize like, hey, I don't want so much taken from me. F you, fuck off, stop taking my stuff. And it's told much better than that. I'm so sorry. And I know there's like a word for it. But the simplicity is, no, we're getting past all that. We're getting to the point where young people are realizing, like the young people who are actually working, they're realizing, hey, this doesn't work. This doesn't equate. This doesn't make sense. Why would I work at a fast food joint for a year on minimum wage? How am I supposed to afford anything? And then I have friends who've gone to college and then they graduate and then they can't get a job and they have to work at the same place I'm working at. So, but then they're in debt and we all have to live with our parents. Like, none of this makes any sense. And we're making good money. And here's the problem is like, okay, this new law in California. Hi, buddy. Hi, Perrin. Perrin jumped over the fence, which is slick. Hi, buddy. But then you have these people who it's like, well, okay, fast food jobs have to pay a certain amount. Well, that's going to affect the price of fast food and all this other stuff. And now what's going to happen? It doesn't improve anything. It just makes everything worse. It just makes everything worse. And I want to just illustrate this because I don't think enough people are hearing it. And I know not enough people understand what they can do, okay? Because it is hard to really what do I do as an individual person? I'm working. I barely have enough time to listen to the radio on my way to work. I don't even want to listen to the talk radio and the news and all this stuff. I just want to like zone out before I go and spend 10 hours, 8 hours at work. They don't want to listen to what's going on. So here's this polite thing, which is you need to vote less government. Like whatever that means for you, less government. So every time they're like, oh, we're going to give a bunch of money to this thing, say no. Why? Because the government is the equivalent of like your crack addict cousin. Like every time you give him $10, he never gives it back. You never see an improvement. It doesn't matter how many times he promises that he's going to get better now. He just needs some help to pay for, whatever. No, it's a lie. Just look at the history of the government, the history of governments worldwide, the history of your local government, the last time they passed. I mean, I live in Southern California, and the idea of like, oh, hey, well, it's so amazing here. And it's like, yeah, except we pay 10 cents every bag that we get at the grocery store. I'm not so old as to remember, hey, it wasn't that long ago when bags were free. But there was a law that was passed by good intentioned but stupid people who were like, yeah, we want to save the environment. And then they forgot about it entirely. And now every time they go to the grocery store and they get a bag for their stuff, they have to pay an additional 10 cents. Every time. Like, that's an inexhaustible amount of money. And it's the same thing with gasoline. Like, hey, gasoline, I think it's like 50 plus cents, some odd cents every time. And while we're at it, why is diesel cost more than gasoline? Diesel is an after product after they've purified gasoline. So why does diesel cost more than gasoline? And the only answer to that is taxation. And then once you've like really exhaustively looked at all these things and you're like, this doesn't make sense, why? Realize that there are people who were told a lie and they believed it and they voted yes to this thing, yes to this thing, yes to this thing, yes to this thing. Because we're going to save Mary. We're going to save all these homeless people. We're going to do all this stuff. California spends more money than any other state in the entire union and has more homeless people than any other state. And we still fail. We epically fail across the boards. We continue to have more homeless people again and again and again and again. California is the iteration of the exact perfect example of failure. You give them something and they take it and they throw it away and they just waste it. It just wastes it. We've spent however many billions of dollars making high-speed rail, whereas Japan has a 30-year high-speed rail that goes 180 miles an hour, and we can't seem to do it from just LA to San Francisco. We can't even do that. We can't even do that. And there's no reason for it other than total incompetency of the government. If you hired a private corporation and you're like, cool, what's the budget for this? And they're like, well, blah, 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 blah. And you had 10 other corporations or 50 or 100 corporations. 100 fucking, quotes. Oh, I could do it for this. I could do it for this. I could do it for this. And you vet them all and you figure out, cool, you do it. And if you don't do it, I'll hire somebody else and you'll be screwed out of your contract for the rest of your money. Like, there's a way to make it better. There is a lot of ways, but we have over-bloviated the government, and the only real solution is shrink it down. The entire government, local, state, federal, and all of them need a big diet. They all need to go on keto. Yeah, myself included. I know I'm kind of chubby. Sorry. And I got the All right. So that's it for right now. I love you all. I'm going to make another video. I got to watch the next episode of Black Mirror. Yeah, I love you. I love you all. I'm so sorry and thankful that those of you who watch, and feel free to make more comments and stuff. Sorry, I'm a little delayed on seeing them or responding, and some of them I'll see that there's a comment, but I can't see the comment, which is super weird. So I'm getting on that. But I love you all. Plaid Man out. Bye.